also the GM. My name is Gora. The game is called Split Second. It's it's a game about warrior cultures and strategic planning and duels. The point of it is that duels are fun and strategic in it, even to the scale of one-on-one fighting, but it has a lot of breadth in terms of like what kind of cultures and stories it can represent. I think anyway, the story we're doing is going to be a bit of a there's some Western, there's some pirate stuff happening. It's going to be, I think, fun. We're starting on a small little town. I guess I'll let my one player who's here introduce himself.
Yeah, my name's Miko Trip. I've never played this before, obviously. Excited to learn the system and build a character with some interest and get going on the game. It should be a good time.
Yep. Good to have you here. It's going to be, I think, a fun time. Yeah, as far as session zero goes, it's not going to be that so much as it is a character building introduction, but that's still as good an example as any. It'll show the sort of system rules and the basics of how it all works and what kind of character you can actually build and what sort of choices you make during that process. So I'm going to, I think because of what this is, I'm going to first go through a couple of the base systems before we actually jump into your character. I know that you've read some of it, but for people watching, perhaps I'm going to also like
Yeah,
at least do
absolutely.
a
Go for it.
summary of what I have in the book. So,
Yeah.
aside from basic, there's a GM and there's players. That's how a lot of games work. The main sort of ability check, like challenge system, we use a D12, but it's a single die roll. You have a target that you're trying to achieve, and then we break it into degrees of failure based on variance of 4. So if the target is 8 for a check, then getting below a 4 on that check would be a critical failure. Getting above a 12 on that check would be a critical success. And then we can go up to super critical for the target number +8, which does specific things if it's an attack, and I get to decide what it does if it's just like trying to do something out of combat. As far as so into the more like newer stuff about this game, we have what's called the timeline. That's the main sort of engine by which we do combat. So characters, like the turn order of the characters exists on a queue. Basically, like there's just a number line that goes up to theoretically infinity. In practice, like 100 is the highest it goes. But characters start at 0. Every time you choose to do something, you move forward on the timeline, and then you stay there, and your action doesn't resolve until you're the lowest on the timeline again. So we have basically like there's a queue of the turn order is a queue, but it's constantly changing because if you do faster actions, you might get to go multiple times in a row, or if you do a slower action, you're probably going to jump over several other characters, and then your action's not going to finish resolving until a few people have had a chance to react to it. So that way there's a trade-off between different like an action might be very slow and likely to hit if you spend time aiming an attack, for example, or you might be able to do like a faster attack, but you're giving up some of the accuracy or damage or whatever it may be based on the moves you have. Um, yeah, moving. So that's basically how the timeline works. I know it's sometimes confusing. I think in practice it makes a lot of sense once you see it happen. Basically, it's just like the weird tripping point is when you choose to do something on your turn, it doesn't happen immediately. You're choosing to initiate an action, and then if it gets back to your turn and you have something in progress, you get to resolve it, and then you initiate your next action. As far as combat goes, combat like attacks are also same as checks. You roll a d12, you add your accuracy, and you try to hit the target's evasion. Another weird wrinkle is that damage is mostly determined by you have hit dice to defend yourself with instead of just a pool of flat points. So when you take damage, you're rolling dice against that damage to reduce it, and those represent like your armor, your ability to jump out of the way and block attacks with your weapons and such. But you roll dice against the damage to evade it or cancel it, and then after you've run out of hit dice is when you start taking actual injuries, which we can assign to different body parts, and they can cause like lasting harmful effects. But because that is a complicated system to do every time. Most of the time, an attack will not result in that. It results in you rolling hit dice against it, and then it becomes serious after you run out. Um, that's most of what I think is necessary in the base systems as far as like what you should know before going into character creation. And then we can jump right into that from there. So, character creation, we're going to start with stats. We have five of them. They are called strength, speed, focus, wit, and spirit. I can go through. I mean, I guess if you have sort of already a concept of a character, we can like go off from there what types of things you'd want to be good at versus what you'd be able to be bad at.
Yeah, I was thinking somewhat of like a Western-esque like sharpshooter.
Yep.
Um, kind of not like new marshal in town, but like, your average kind of Wild West kind of
Yep.
badass sharpshooter.
Yep. The wandering gunslinger, the bounty hunter, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, so probably first one I'm going to describe then is focus because that's the one for accuracy and also to some extent like the severity of a character. It's like mechanically it's important because that's the one that adds to the base accuracy of your attacks, but it also gives you some extra skill points. And my narrative thematic description is that someone with high focus is someone who's especially skilled and discerning and might even come off as like intense because it's someone who's very aware of everything that's happening and what they're doing. Whereas someone with low focus might be like clumsy or detached from their surroundings. Then from that, so that's probably one you want high for that kind of archetype. I'm going to
Huh?
go through the other ones and you can think about like what you how you want to arrange them because we do have this rule, which I believe you've read already, where they exist on a scale from -2 up to 5, and you're spending points on them. But if you make something at the -2 level, you get an extra
An extra point.
additional
Yeah.
point. And like you're already getting an extra 2 points because it's -2, and that's how math works, but you get an extra point. That comes with the caveat that I've sort of designed a lot of this so that -2 is going to hurt sometimes. Any of these five stats, if you take a -2, you're taking like a serious character weakness that's going to come up at some point.
Cool.
But it is like something you can do to sort of min max and have a character that's like superhuman in one area, but incompetent in another. I'm going to go through the rest from order that way. So, strength is physical fitness. It's like your athleticism and also your physical health. You roll it, you add it to the damage of your attacks, and you also roll strength checks when you're resisting injuries and resisting falling unconscious due to injuries. So, it's your ability to just sort of push through things physically and take tank damage, and also like how much power you can exert on your surroundings. Yeah, physically makes sense. High strength means big and muscly. Low strength means frail, weak, etc. Speed is the next one I have. It's pretty important and relevant to this system specifically because it affects the activation time of all of your actions. So, particularly fast character is one, not necessarily that moves very fast, but someone with really sharp reflexes who just like reacts instantly without having to stop and think about things. So, slow, similarly, a particularly slow character might not be just physically slow, but they might be someone who thinks about everything before they do it. And that like means they won't be able to act as quickly in combat or they won't be able to get out as many attacks in a short amount of time. Um, but it does matter a lot, sort of the tone of how your fights are going to go. If you're a character with really high speed, then you're going to be able to dominate the initiative and make a lot of actions and react to what other people are doing more so than if you're a slow character with like particularly slow weapons. Then in the same way, you're going to be waiting a lot for your turn, but your turn, like if you put those points elsewhere, your turns are going to matter more. You could be a slow character, but really high accuracy and damage, so your attacks are spaced out, but significant enough that it's okay. We already went over focus. Next one is wit. It's your character's memory and cleverness. all of that like sort of academic knowledge. You would be rolling wit checks for remembering stuff, being able to access lore. Mechanically, it also adds to your skill points a lot. So if you have high wit, you're going to be able to have more abilities and more training in like weapons and equipment and that sort of thing. Whereas if you have low wit as a weakness, then you're getting negative skill points and you have then less strategic options as a character or less specialized training in whatever weapons and armor and equipment you're using. The last one I have is Spirit. That is the social skill for the most part. It's charisma, but also like your force of will in that, like I call it Spirit because it's someone who like really cares about stuff and like you have sort of if you have high spirit, you have like a reservoir of self-importance and drive to achieve things. And then, yeah, mechanically, it's used for social ability checks and also for magic. If your character is a magic user, you use it for the damage instead of strength. So I guess you could be a magic user with low spirit, but in the same way that you could be a sword user with low strength.
Okay. Very good.
And yeah, I believe yeah, if you're using the spreadsheet thing, it'll auto calculate like it has a 7 point above the numbers. And then when it's at zero, you know that you've spent it all because you start with 7 points.
Sure, yeah. I've got my strength set to -1, speed to 1, focus 4, wit 2, spirit 1.
Okay. Yeah, sounds like a pretty good arrangement. I think the sheet also, if you like scroll down on it, it'll have a radar graph plotted out for the
Yes,
stats. Yeah, because
yes.
I think that's cool. I don't know how universally applicable that is, but I think it's a fun thing to have to make your character and then see that. So using the sheet, I believe it will already have calculated your evasion and toughness and reputation, but we're going to go over those just for the sake of
Yeah,
understanding what they are.
absolutely.
So yeah, toughness, it's 3 plus your strength. It is how much staggering you can resist. So certain, like when you take critical hits in this game or when you are affected by certain abilities, you're staggered, which pushes you back on the timeline.
Yeah.
And then if you are pushed back more than your toughness value, you are interrupted and whatever you were trying to do is canceled. So having high strength increases your toughness and it makes it so that if you already have an attack that's coming, it's harder to stop it from happening. But then
Okay.
if it's low, people can sort of mess up what you're trying to do. Evasion is a little more self-explanatory. It's just the target that other people have to roll when they're attacking you. Basically, like opposite of accuracy, it becomes how hard you are to hit, how easy it is for you to dodge out of the way without even having to use your hit dice.
Mhm.
Reputation is a little bit more complicated. It's half your spirit. It has a number, but also a thematic component that you're going to have to write because it's like the number value represents how likely people are to have heard of you and how much of a bonus you can get if you're using your reputation to your own advantage. But you have to decide sort of what that reputation is. And it doesn't have to be true either. It can be like you might be someone who's kind and soft spoken in person, but everybody who's heard of you has heard you're a cold blooded killer, and that's what you use to your advantage. So you write down like a short phrase for if somebody has heard of you, this is the characteristic they would have heard.
Okay.
And it can just be like an adjective or like a short sentence or something that fits in that box, but
Yeah, I'll
that
think
is
of
something
something.
that will fit. And it's also something you can come back to later if you like, decide on it as you're getting through the character archetype. But yeah, so that's mostly it for stats. The next section is core values. So that is basically the role playing drives that you are setting for yourself. Like, not so much rules, but like motivations that you're setting up. A core value can be something like, I will never kill an unarmed opponent because it's sort of a hard line that your character won't cross unless they're really, really forced to. It should be something that you take seriously as the character. You can make like I think what I suggest is two or three. You can have as many as you like, but it's basically the driving principles a character has. If your character really cares about like honor or honesty, then they would have a
Hmm.
core value that's just a short sentence reflecting that. Or if there's specific lines that they won't cross, like Batman would have core value no killing because that's a rule he follows voluntarily for the sake of his personality and psychology and all that stuff. And they should sort
Yeah.
of, yeah, explain what type of person your character is, what they're willing to do, and what is going to motivate them to action.
I think I'm gonna go with like victory at all costs, no women or children, and then or no violence to women or children, I should say.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, I'll think of a third one. I don't have anything off the top of my head at the moment.
Yeah, you can think of one. Those are pretty good. Like those two starting ones are a pretty good place. It is the kind of like just notes you can basically have in front of you during the game and think like
Yeah,
these are hard guidelines for myself on role playing the character
absolutely, yeah.
as opposed to just like vague like references to personality traits because you sort of know the type of person you're playing from what they won't do, if that makes sense. Okay, the next section we have is your social background. It is a choice you have to make. It determines a lot of stuff. Your starting relationships are things that have mechanical benefits or drawbacks. They can be like debts, grudges, rivals, people you trust, or people who trust you. These are all things that have mechanical influences on the game, again, to sort of influence role play in a certain direction. But they do matter, and they are something of a currency in terms of how these backgrounds work. You get those from the background. You also get the number of base skill points you have. So, well, you also get skill points from your stats, but you get a base number from your background, like how much time you've had or how much resources and access to training you've had. And your starting wealth is also from that, which is what you will spend on your starting equipment, because it's all the stuff that's based on how you grew up and what sort of social class you belong to or mostly belonged to. I think you
Yeah.
already have an idea of what it's going to be. I can go through, well, I'll list a couple examples. It's like
No,
you
you
could
can go
be,
through them. For
yeah,
my character specifically, though, I am going with humble.
okay,
One debt owed to me, and I owe one debt with
yep,
18 skill points and 10 wealth.
yes. So that is yeah, humble is someone who's, yeah, basically like grew up in poverty, has had a hard time, but you've been able to make it work. Other examples I have are like socialite is someone who's basically forced their way to the top. So they start with a lot of money and a decent amount of skill points, but a bunch of enemies, people with grudges against you. So your character would have people out in the world who are actively trying to hunt you down and cause you harm. And then there's Pampered is the other one that starts with the most wealth out of any of the backgrounds, but the least skill points because it's someone who has had everything done for them for their entire life. So you might be a pampered character who can start with like really expensive armor and weapons, but you don't have a lot of abilities or training. Um, yeah, and they basically go to the tune of that. There's also the Wanderer one, which is min-maxed for skill points. It's someone who you know nobody, you have no money, no belongings, but a lot of training and capability. And then I also have rules for making custom ones or modifying them if you need to. But yeah, you're going with Humble, which lets us preset those numbers. I think on your sheet, you can see like in the skill points section, you'll be able to click the like fill out the background base skill points, and you can put your wealth in the inventory. Like there's a little box next to your inventory that you can put wealth in.
Yep, I've
Yeah,
got
and then in
those spelled out
relationships, it
there.
lets you fill those out. Okay,
I
so
think I am going
since
to take a
you've,
rival. Just try to
yeah,
come up with a name, but I am going to take one rival as well.
yes, I also have a list of NPCs that are going to be sort of background characters that you can pick for
Okay.
relationships. So yeah, since relationships is the first one, we'll do that now. Yeah, base is determined by background. You can choose to start with a rival or a character you have a grudge against or a character you trust, and you can also always trust someone who trusts you or have a grudge against um, someone who has a grudge against you, just because that's how interpersonal relationships can work. If your background gives you people who hate you, you can decide that you hate them back just as much. Yes. So mechanically, I'm going to overview those. Grudges, you get bonus damage when you're fighting somebody you have a grudge against. Debts are something like you owe someone a favor or they owe you a favor, they can come and ask for it. And then if you refuse, the consequences most likely that will turn into a grudge against you. And trust gives you a bonus when you're working with somebody, like rolling checks. You get to add more if someone who trusts you is helping you. And rivalry makes your highest stat gets to count as 1 point higher when you're competing against your rival, because it's like they bring out the best and worst of each other. So we have that's the overview of what we have. You are starting with a debt owed to you and a debt you owe. I'm going to send the NPC list in the Discord if you want to look at it, and I'm also going to just read the descriptions of each of them.
Yeah, go for it.
Yep. Let me grab that link. Yeah, just so you can see it and reference it after I read through, but I'm still going to read through it for the benefit of anybody watching this. So for this, I didn't really explain at the start. The setting is a small seaside town on a jungle island. It used to be very successful and wealthy, and now has, for the most part, collapsed into economic ruin and is just sort of full of people who are making do and trying to survive or pretend that things are still going well when they're not. And yeah, I have a list of a few NPCs that will be in the periphery or background or center stage, some of them. Yeah, starting with, we have Sheriff Bill Jailbird Jericho. That's his nickname because most of his free time is spent in the jailhouse as opposed to socializing or doing anything of his own. He just likes to sit there and watch the prisoners, or even when there's no prisoners there, he just like hangs out at his job because he doesn't have a lot going on. He believes in justice and keeping the peace, but sometimes that just means avoiding conflict at any cost. He's not much of a like stand up and fight. He's more of a let's figure out how we can make the least amount of people angry type of peacekeeper. Next one we have is his deputy, Gwendolyn Summertree. She cares a lot more about active justice, but she has a somewhat limited role and isn't able to do as much as she wants to. She has a young child that she moved to the town with some years ago, but she's not actually a local to the town. She cares about family. That's her value I have listed here. Next person, we have Gregory John Mathers Sr. He is basically the patriarch of the town. He's not the mayor, but his family is the most wealthy and influential, and he's basically the de facto leader of the town who is trying to cling to some of the glory that it once had, but obviously with the state the town is in, it becomes less and less of a it becomes harder to take him seriously as time goes on. But he's trying. Next person we have is the saloon owner, Ginny Redwood. She used to be a famous sharpshooter and bounty hunter, but now runs the saloon. It's named the Redwood Saloon after her because her name recognition and fame drew in a lot of original customers, and now it's just a fixture of the town. Most people know her from that, as opposed to her glory days, because it's been quite a long time. Although people say you still shouldn't get in a gunfight with her.
Yep, that's going to be
Yeah.
my rival right there. Friendly rivalry.
Yep. And then is it like you know her from back in the day, or is it like you're beefing
Yeah,
with her as an old lady?
we're gonna say I knew her back in the day because I don't want to start beef with an old lady, right?
Yeah.
So I knew her back in the day, and we've always had a friendly rivalry of who's been the better shot.
Yeah. I like that. That works out. I'll keep going through the list. We've got a couple of them left. Next one is so I'll say Ezekiel, not Gabe first. I have them in the wrong order, but this is somewhat our antagonist figure who I'm going to talk about his reputation here. He is available for reputations because some of them are bad relationships. It's only fair to give you that option. So he is a career criminal. He's not very old. He's like early mid 20s, but he's already wanted basically everywhere he's been. He's quite successful for his age, but he's also has just a mounting um, army of people trying to get him and put him behind bars or kill him as revenge for something he did to them unnecessarily because he's smart, he's a good shot, he's good at what he does, but he really only cares about himself and the amount of money he has. And then we also have his brother Gabe Peccary, who is the dumb, big, muscly brother who loves family and he loves to do what his brother says. And it's not that he's not as much of a threat because he is, but he doesn't really make decisions on his own. He's more, if you see him, it means his brother sent him to do something. And then the last one we have on the list is Sycamore Sam. He is the shaman of the native group that lives on the island from before the town was first set up as a sort of trade post. He's called Sycamore Sam because his true name is not something that's revealed to outsiders, but the townsfolk decided to call him that because he's a very tall, severe, strong-looking old man. So they call him that for his resemblance to the tree, and he allows them to because they need to call him something. But yeah, that's the whole list. Of course, you can also make up other characters if you want to, and we will add and work them in. But yeah, that's sort of the basis option of the game is that I come here with a few characters that are probably going to be relevant, and then you can have your connections to them, or you can make up characters that I will weave into the story.
I think I'll take Ginny as my rival there.
Yep.
Um, but I think some of the other ones I'll have to think about if I have a tie-in with them. But I have an idea or two, but it's kind of in
Yep.
nascent stages. So
Yeah, and your options are someone you owe a debt to and someone who owes you. So that can be either money, like if you're humble background, it makes sense that you might have borrowed money from somebody at some point, but it could also just be that you were in a rough place and they decided to be kind to you when they didn't have to, so you owe them to make it back at some point in whatever way you can. And debt owed to you similarly, either you lent someone money or you did something for someone that you really didn't have to.
yeah, for sure. We'll think about those. I don't have them
Yep.
off the top of my head, but for sure. At the end of the stream, though, I will. You can show a copy of my character sheet. And
Yep, and that's why I sent you the list as well, because you can keep looking at it and referencing it as you get ideas and just sort of plug in those names and write a quick like one sentence description of how that relationship came to be. Next section we have is skill points. So here's where we do some math. If you're using the spreadsheet, it will have already calculated your total amount of skill points you can spend, assuming you plugged in your background number.
I did.
It's a base of 15 plus the number you get from your background, plus your total focus, plus twice your wit. So, like I alluded to earlier, focus and wit both add to your skill points, but wit more so because focus also does other stuff like accuracy and being a skill that comes up more often because it's used for stealth and awareness and stuff. So it gets other stuff. I can't give everything to focus. We have a few different things you can spend those points on because usually ends up being a pretty big pool. You can spend it on abilities, which you can pick from our list of fighting styles. Those are like special moves you can do or perks and traits you have that affect the way you fight and the way you play the game. You can also use skill like rank ups different skills, which are like the checks we have, the way an ability check works is I'll ask for a check using one of your five stats, and then you can look at your list of skills and volunteer one that makes sense, and then also add that to the check.
Okay.
I think that, yeah, I have a list of 12 of them that should already be on the sheet, unless I didn't update the Google one recently enough. But yeah, there's different ones that you can rank up, and I can explain what they do. And then the last one you can spend skill points on is equipment, which is ranked up similarly to skills, except that it's for weapons and armor. So it works a little bit different because you rank it up to five, but then the ranks are divided between different attributes. So if you're ranking up like firearms, for example, you can rank up damage and accuracy separately, but the total has to be up to the same max of rank five that skills can be, with
Okay.
five representing like you are a master in this thing.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I'll go down the list and keep overviewing those. Yeah, abilities. Other notes about how those work is that we have eight fighting styles. Each one is named after a different mythical creature because I think that's cool. They're called Dragon, Kraken, Ogre, Hydra, Basilisk, Cherub, Goblin, and Demon style. Each one has three tiers of abilities, but you don't have to pick one of them as a class. That's, I think, maybe the most important thing to keep in mind. There are less classes and more assortments of abilities based on character archetypes and mechanical, like inter benefit, like things that stack well with each other and work towards a particular strategy. If you want to get the higher tier ones, you have to have more in the lower tier. I've been calling it skill pyramids. I don't know how much intuitive sense that makes, but it's basically if you want one tier two, for example, dragon style ability, you need to have at least two already in the tier one of dragon style. And if you want a tier three in dragon style, then you would have to have at least two in tier two and then at least three in tier one to support those. But it can be any from that tier. And if you're just picking tier one abilities, you can pick from whatever you want because you don't have to worry about that limitation.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
I'm just kind of looking through all of them.
yeah.
Well,
As far as your
there's a
character
lot to go through.
archetype, Basilisk is probably a lot of what you want because it's the sort of assassin quick draw build. There's a few different options like Deadeye is like lets you psych out an opponent and make them easier to hit. There's First Strike, which lets you instantly draw a weapon and make a powerful attack with it, but only once per fight. There's a quick draw perk that lets you basically start combat faster than other people. Stuff like that is probably like pretty in line with the tropes you're thinking of. Aside from that, Hydra is all about like quick and overwhelming attacks. So you might want to look at some things from that. There's like the flurry move that lets you attack twice as much, twice as it lets you attack two times at once for a sort of fan the hammer type of thing. And then also the follow through move lets you like skip the cooldown of an attack and instantly attack again, but just push the cooldown after that. So that would also be a like shooting your gun twice without worrying about the kickback until later.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'll probably go with some sort of hybrid between Hydra and Basilisk for sure.
Yeah. And then, yeah, of course, you can look at the other things. There's, if you want to be like clever and have sort of roguish scoundrel stuff, Goblin is where you would look for that. I'm assuming your character's not going to have any like magic user stuff, so
Not
probably
really.
not, because Demon style is the one with a bunch of wizard magic user type abilities. Cherub is support stuff. Dragon is for like mixing magic with weapon and armor use. And then, yeah, Kraken is grappling and Ogre is tanking. And that's a basic description of all of them. But yeah, you can see sort of how like it helps to have an archetype already going into it because then you can look at which ones line up with the types of tropes you're thinking of and
Sure.
the types of things you want to be able to do. Um, yeah, you're looking at those. Skills, you'll probably want to pick a few of those, but you can also use it as like you spending leftover points after picking out the abilities you want. Equipment, probably also something you want, especially if you're like a sharpshooter. I imagine you want to like rank up your firearm usage so you can have the accuracy increased even beyond what your focus already gives you, which yeah, to be clear, your accuracy is already good because you have good focus, but you can make it even higher by putting skill points into that weapon.
All right. Okay. Yeah, if you want
And
to keep going and just
yep,
just
I'll keep yeah, that's
describing
all of the
stuff while I
stuff
figure.
from skill points. One note for skills and equipment also that this is something that your sheet will auto calculate for you, but ranks 4 and 5 each cost an extra skill point. Otherwise, it's 1 to 1. But the reason for that is it's a skill curve type of thing. You can get ranks 1 to 3 relatively easily, but then becoming a master at something requires you to invest additional skill points to like reach the absolute pinnacle of what you can get, but it's something that there's a formula in the sheet that will do that to help out because the math can get tricky if you're doing it by hand.
Yeah.
And yeah, also weapons and armor are each divided into two things, like I kind of said earlier. But if you have, for example, 5 ranks in firearms, you can divide those 5 points between either accuracy or damage. And for armor, it would be your damage resistance and your exhaustion threshold. So, like how
Okay.
long you can stay fighting without getting tired and how much you're reducing incoming damage by while wearing that armor. Unarmored also being one of them. So, if you're going to be like a sharpshooter who's just like carrying a gun and not much else, you might still want to consider putting some points into unarmored, like training, being able to fight for longer, or just having thick skin that lets you tank a little more damage than a normal person would.
Yeah, that would make sense
Yeah.
for sure.
Moving on
So
from, or yep,
the equipment you said
yep,
so your skill points go with equipment, but they also have wealth like attached to them, right? Like
yep.
flintlock pistol or pepper box. So like how does that mesh in with the how
So
does that
the
mesh in with the skill points?
so the way that would work is you already know what weapon you're going to pick. So you however much money you have, you spend that on the weapons you're going to have, and then you rank up based on the tags that the weapons have in their descriptions. So all black powder weapons have, I believe, the firearm tag in them, which means that's like you can rank up that because it's on the list of things you can rank up in equipment, and it just means any firearm you use would then have the benefits.
Okay.
And yeah, for equipment, I recently made the pepper box thing because you had mentioned interest in it. It has a little bit less damage than a normal flintlock pistol because it has to be smaller caliber, well, for game balance reasons, but also because it has to be a lower caliber to fit more barrels. If you wanted, we could make a hybrid thing that is as expensive as the current pepper box and as much damage as a flintlock pistol, but it would be only 4 shots.
Okay.
Because then, yeah, I have like relatively realistic loading times as well. So that's a note that if you're using firearms, you have a pepper box, so you've got 6 shots, but then the amount of time it takes you to reload even one bullet is enough time for someone to like run up and stab you several times with a great sword.
That would make sense, yeah. Check the Discord, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you want to, because you're sort of considering like skill points and how we're going to be divvying up those things, we can do a quick short break and then move on from that, unless there's like more
Yeah,
specific questions you have about equipment before we do that, but we can come back to that as well just as easily.
yeah. Yeah, I'm down for a little break and then we can come back to
Okay.
it.
Yeah, break for a few minutes, think about your skill points, and yeah, we'll be back in
Sounds
15, I
good.
guess.
Sounds
Okay, so we're back. We're last thing we were talking about was the skill points for his character. If you just jumped on the stream, we're making a character for Split Second, which is a game I made and a game I'm GMing this short adventure in. But this is our session zero. We have one of three players making his character as an example of how the rules work. Where we last left off, we were looking at skill points and abilities and how he's going to spend those. One thing that happens a lot because this character building gives you a lot of customization, but since it's a lot of math and a lot of points you spend in different places, it's common to look at it and then sort of come back and jump back and forth after you see what all of your options are because you don't want to pick everything and spend too much in one area and then realize there was other stuff or that you wanted to do or other stuff that looks cooler later on. So where we currently are, we're moving on to wealth, which is your starting equipment and supplies and things like that. It's a little bit of an abstraction. It's still like a number you have, but it's not meant to represent specific currency. It's meant to represent one wealth is either currency or trading goods that equal about 1 week of living normally. So it could mean like camping supplies for a week, or it could be just like enough money to stay in an inn and buy food for that amount of time. That way it's simplified. So in game, if time is going by, you just lose one wealth every week. And you can also use that as a metric for how expensive different types of gear are. Before the actual list, I have a couple things you can look at. There's weapon quality, which basically if you're buying a weapon, you can have a +1 accuracy or damage at the cost of an additional wealth, but you can also make it have reduced accuracy or damage for being less expensive. So you could have your character has a gun, someone could have like a sword that's just poorly made and not very sharp. And because of that, it does a little bit less damage, or maybe it's like unwieldy and balanced poorly, so it does less damage, but it was less expensive for you to buy. And that way you can get more equipment. And then I also have a little rule system here for combination weapons. We don't have to go into the super detail of it because your character, I don't think, is going to have that, but I think it's fun, so I'll at least summarize it. Basically, you can pay for two weapons +1 and have them attached to each other, with the benefit being that you can then wield them both at once because equipping something is an action you have to do in this game because it's all like time based. So if you have like a gun with a dagger attached to it as a combination weapon, it means one of them is going to take or both of them actually get an accuracy penalty, but the benefit is you can equip them at the same time. And then if someone like charges you, you already have the melee weapon equipped because that's historically what it's for. But also it's just a cool thing to have because you can build those like weird and wacky historical weapons like hammer or halberd with gun built into it, even though that makes the whole thing less practical, but it's cool to have and fun
Right.
to make a character that has that kind of thing if you have the wealth to spend on it.
Right. That is fun.
Yeah, we have you're being a gunslinger, so we can skip over a lot of it. I have lists of different weapons. A lot of them are medieval or Renaissance as well, because that's where a lot of different weapons are. Things like all types of things. It's an expanding list as the game is developed, but various swords, daggers, whips, pole arms. I have a bunch of shields which count as weapons stats wise because weapons will give you defensive bonuses. They all have hit dice values. So shields are basically just weapons that are bad in terms of their offensive stats, but they have larger amounts of hit dice because they're defensive, but you can still attack with them. So you could also make a character that does like shield bashes or even has a shield with other weapons built into it and use that as your fighting style, basically. Um, with some skill point investment and creativity, you can make that work. And then I also have improvised weapons, which are less things that you start with because they don't have equipment costs. But if your character was spec'd into improvised weapons, I would let you start with, I should probably write that as a rule, but you're allowed to start with an improvised weapon if you want, but it is also not necessary because they represent things like chairs that you picked up to use in a fight. They do random amounts of damage, whereas most weapons do fixed damage. And they're all well, most of them are disposable. So meaning if you roll a natural one when you're attacking with it, they just break and you have to pick up another one. Natural one also being because we're using D12s in this system, it's more likely than it would be if you were rolling D20s.
Well,
And it's mostly just size categories, but then I also have musical instrument in here for if you wanted to be like a character that makes noise to psychologically attack your opponents. That's something that is sorted with improvised weapons because it doesn't really go anywhere else. But that's also a character build you can make if you want to be like someone who just plays your flute so annoyingly that other people lose the will to fight. You can do that, or you can pick skills that make your attacks more deadly, so you can do like sonic attacks and kill people with music, like that Kung Fu Hustle scene.
right. Your classic bardic kind of character.
Yeah. And then unarmed also is like we have maybe that can be seen as a baseline stat for comparing how other weapons are. A punch unarmed, like without any additional training, a normal guy punching is an activation of 7 and a damage value of 2 and a reach of 1, meaning it's like you have to be right up next to someone because I didn't say earlier, but a consideration for if you're doing a lot of melee is that melee can be at levels 1 to 3, 1 being punching and grappling, and 3 being like pole arm distance. So there is a strategic difference between weapons of different reaches, but you're using a gun, so your reach is someone in the same room as you.
Right. So yeah, I'm probably gonna go with the pepper box for my gun. I think
Yep.
decided that.
We've got, yeah, it has a big list of rules basically describing
So
stuff you kind of like. I
activation.
mean, you know how ammunition and loading work. It's just the number values for how long those things take.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, which means you also have to buy bullets as
Yes.
supplies, which I think I assume you have enough money too. I think Humble gives you what, like 15
10.
wealth?
10
10
wealth.
wealth. Okay. Well, I think that's enough. I think. I don't know. If let's
Get
scroll
down
down to
here.
supplies and see how much bullets
Yep.
cost.
6 wealth. Bullet cartridges are 6 wealth.
Okay, well, that's enough for 10 attacks. So we can say that since you're only, yeah, if you had half of that for 3, then yeah, either you can make it that your pepper box is like low quality and have half of a thing, or we can, I'll let
Uh,
you have like a smaller amount of bullets for half that cost.
Maybe we could pick the pepper box up later in the adventure. Hold on. Go with
Yeah, because
something. So
that
like
then
the humble background is kind of restrictive on wealth for sure.
yes, it's also
Um,
something you can custom adjust it if you want to. Like you could, for example, give up having someone owe you a debt at the exchange rate is a positive relationship equals 5 wealth. So if you give up having someone owe you a debt to tweak the background a little bit, then you would be able to start with more money.
or-
Which yeah, the +5 I think would let you get pepper box plus 10 shots. But that would still be then like you're walking into town with like nothing except your gun and bullets, which is fine. Like it's reasonable for an adventure to start with you like
yeah, you don't have to be
desperately
fully
needing a
kitted
job.
out. Right. Um,
Oh yeah, I see in the comic. And yeah, gun shield is absolutely a thing you could do. You could have a any flintlock firearm you like combination weapon with a shield, and it would just be a poor quality gun and a shield that is difficult to attack people with. But I think that's a thing that existed historically. I mean, people did all kinds of stuff, even if it didn't really work. Yeah, on the customizing your background, also, instead of giving up the positive relationship, the same thing could be done via like giving yourself a negative relationship or less skill points. But you could have like an extra person with a grudge against you as a drawback in exchange for having more starting money.
Definitely. I think I'm gonna erase my debts held. I just have a
So
debt
you owe
owed.
somebody, but nobody owes
Right.
you.
Yep, and that'll give me 15 wealth, which is enough for the pepper box and a gunner's kit.
Yep.
That'll give me 20 shots. Um,
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize I had that as a separate thing. So that's bag of cotton wool plugs.
they're a fixed. How
Oh,
many
yeah, I didn't even
barrels
see
or
that I wrote that
revolving?
down. Yeah, the bullet
Revolving
paper
chambers
cartridges are
fixed.
faster.
So I think can we tweak the pepper box to have 5 chambers instead of 6?
Um, Let me think of what the trade-off for that would be. Um,
Maybe just a
wait,
lower
what's
activation time and reloading, like maybe 3 to
yeah, well, it
5
would be a
lower
slower
reloading,
activation time, making it
or I guess slower. Yeah.
2, 1, black powder. Okay. Let me see the damage comparison I did for. So a flintlock pistol is 11 damage, a pepper box is 9. Um, yeah, I could do like +1 to the activation, and it has no way making it have 5 shots instead is making it worse. If we if we're
Because
trying to make it cheaper is the goal.
no, the goal is really just to fit like 4 uses of the gunner's kit to the the pepper box, right? So
Oh,
4
right. Yeah,
uses
yeah. So
would
that it
use
lines
up
up.
all of my stuff rather than
Yes. So yeah, we'll make it 5 chambered and then it just has yeah, let's say 10 damage instead of 11.
okay.
Or 10 damage instead of 9 is what I mean, because it's slightly bigger caliber than it would have been. Because that's the logical reasoning that I used for reducing the damage in the first place was more barrels fitted into a small space. So 5 shots, 10 damage each, with the extra note that you don't add your strength to it. But you can still add damage from other abilities. So, like a power attack is one of your base abilities that adds d6 damage and adds to the cooldown. For a gun, we would assume that this means you preemptively like overloaded one of the barrels, so it's like a more hefty shot with more kickback, because that is also a real thing that happens. Well, not that happens now, but a thing that like historically was done with these types of weapons.
If you reload yourself, you can make hot loads,
Yeah,
put
you
more
can like
gunpowder
that's a
in,
thing that people did was like you
and
just
do still actually.
and
Yeah.
do, yeah. Oh yeah, people like do custom bullets and stuff.
Yep.
Forgot, but
For
yeah.
reloading. Yeah, people
Yeah.
reload themselves all the time.
Yeah, if you don't care about like the safety specs of the weapon you're using, you can do a lot of things.
Yeah, right. The box gunner's kit.
Yeah, that's also why in-game a power attack would be that, and it has a drastically increased cooldown, so it would be a kickback that hurts.
All right, cool. Yeah, we can keep going. I think I'm gonna take the pepper box and the gunner's kit
Yep.
for inventory, and yeah, we can keep going while I continue to look through these skills and perks and such.
Yep. I think yeah, wealth is actually the last part of the character creation section. I assume you're not, yeah, you don't have money for armor anyways, but
Oh,
Unarmored is a thing you might consider putting skill points in if you have extras after. I don't remember what your exact total ended up being, but yeah, it's 5 points per ability. And then maxing out a skill at rank 5 is 7 points because of the extra point costs at rank 4 and 5.
hmm. They cost two at 4 and 5 instead of just one.
Yes, because of the learning curve. And also that makes it like the opposite of stats, where with your 5 stats, if you have one that's particularly weak, then you get extra points. But with skill points, it costs more to make one max value.
Yeah, definitely. All right, cool. Well, I guess I will get you my finished character sheet here shortly, and yeah, no, this is gonna be fun. I'm excited for
Yeah,
sure.
you can look through the things, pick out abilities. If you want to, we could do a short rules introduction thing as well. Like if you get a couple of the abilities, we could do a quick like combat with just you to sort of showcase slash test out.
Yeah, if we want to like, if you just want to give me an NPC with care with stuff already built out, um, that'll probably work a little bit better. That way, you don't have to sit here and wait for me to figure out what I
Yeah,
want to do.
well, I don't have a character that's already built here. I mean, we could also use your character with like base moves if you wanted to do that, but otherwise, yeah, we can just like sort of talk through the choices you're making as you're
Yeah,
picking out your
let's do.
abilities.
Yeah, that's fine. Roll up back up here to the fighting styles.
Yep, I think we said earlier primarily we're looking at Basilisk and Hydra because those are the
That's
most
correct. Yeah.
gunslinger-esque. Well, Hydra is also a bunch of dual wielding stuff, but in your case, there's a couple moves like Flurry and Follow Through that let you do fan the hammer type attacks.
Definitely taking Deadeye as a move.
Yep. It's a cool one. And then noting that that one uses a couple skills, so you probably then also want to rank up your awareness because that's what you use when you Jedi somebody.
What are your skills? What are the maximum on your skills? So I have 41 skill points, and I have not
Yeah.
assigned them yet. Um, so how would we how best should we go about assigning my skill points here?
So the skills go up to rank 5. Generally, it's best to at least pick out a couple abilities that you want to have before anything else, since those are bigger chunks. Like I would say pick 2 or 3 abilities that you definitely want and write them down and have that total. And then start looking at like what types of skills you want to be good at and deciding like how many points you're going to invest in the equipment that you use because that does matter as well. Like if you want to be a master sharpshooter and put 5 ranks in firearms, that does make a big difference, but it's a significant point investment.
So when you say 5 ranks in firearms, where is that? Where would that be on this the character sheet?
Okay, on so yeah, for equipment, it's a little bit. So you have to sort of type in the formula for the different attributes. You'll click equipment right under where it says skill points, and then look up at the formula. It'll be just 2 numbers added together. So the first one would be accuracy and the second one would be damage, and you just change those zeros and then it'll display as the total.
So so I would put firearms like next to equipment or like in one of the boxes below.
You would type out firearms like in the box that has a dash in it next to the zero.
Okay, very good.
And then, yeah, in the zero, you just write a number plus another number in the formula so that it has the total rank and can subtract
So
that from your skill points.
where is that in the document?
If you're
Firearms.
on browser, if you just click the cell with the zero, then up at the top it'll have the formula which
Right,
says
but I'm
int.
saying in the book though, like where would I see
Oh,
the
okay.
numbers that I need to add?
In the book, we have equipment right after skills before wealth.
After fighting style.
Yeah, after fighting style, after skills, equipment, and then weapons.
I got you. Okay.
And yeah, it's accuracy damage. So you have the total rank can be up to five, but each of those ranks is assigned to either accuracy or damage, which is why you're writing it as two numbers added together, and then it'll have your total rank for the skill point calculation.
So that
And
would
you just,
be so like sharpshooter, I guess. I guess I'm just a little confused as to how you would pick those numbers out, right? Like so if it's a so if we're doing like the pepper box,
yep.
right? Or the firearms skill where so like it would be my awareness plus what?
Well, that wouldn't you, well, with firearms, it wouldn't
Okay.
use your awareness. It would be like when you attack, you would add your focus to the accuracy and then also the ranks in firearms that are assigned to accuracy.
Okay.
But yeah, because that's why it's a separate thing from skills, because it's specifically your training in that weapon, which either makes you do more damage or more likely to hit.
And then where would you find accuracy at? Like I guess like so it says like ranks for accuracy, right?
Yep.
But like where would you find your accuracy at on the skill sheet to add ranks to it?
On
Um
the sheet, it would just be like you look at the formula and just make the first number be what you want the accuracy to be.
I got you. And then the second number would be what?
The second number would be whatever the remainder is because the two of them add up to what your total rank is in firearms. So, for example, if you want it to be just five ranks all in accuracy, then you would just have five plus zero.
I got you. Okay.
It's I know it's a little bit tricky to look at in the Google sheet because we're working with the limitations of like the sheet formulas not being able to parse
Right.
other types of notation
Okay.
for the sake of not making it take up a ridiculous amount of space on the sheet. But
Yeah, yeah, I got you.
yeah, once you enter it like that, it should subtract the correct amounts of
It
points from
does.
your
Yeah, it does.
unspent.
It was I was just a little confused there for
Yeah.
sure. So we're gonna make axle firearms definitely rank five. Five ranks in firearms. Um and then as far as like defensive or like armor goes,
Yes. So I guess if you I can explain exhaustion threshold more because that's a consideration here. Well, and I guess damage resistance as well. If you're not wearing armor, you're starting out at an exhaustion threshold of 100 and a damage resistance of 0. The exhaustion threshold is the point on the timeline where after you pass it, you are exhausted and it does a bunch of stuff like it starts increasing the cooldowns of all your actions and making it more difficult for you to move and do things.
sure.
I think it reduces like your skill checks too, but it's bad to get past that. It's a point on the timeline, meaning like because you're just continually moving forward as you do actions, it's basically like it becomes the number of things you can do in a fight before you start running out of juice, and that the baseline number is 100, which is each point on that is roughly half a second. So a
Okay.
little bit before a minute of like actual intense fighting is when you start losing your edge. And then damage resistance is something that's reduced from incoming damage. So it makes your hit point, your hit dice spending is more efficient if you have good damage resistance because you're not taking as much, or if you have really high damage resistance and then you take a small amount of damage, then you don't have to spend any dice because it's all absorbed.
Okay. So let's say if I want a cloth armor, how would we go about adding that to the equipment?
If you spend the money, so on your sheet you would write cloth armor in the big items box and you would subtract its cost from the
I
wealth
got you.
number, but then I don't think I have a spot on the sheet for you to write its stats, but you would change your damage resistance value to just be the number for cloth armor, and then you would add
Okay.
that number to your hit dice. or add the hit dice to your hit dice pool, which is a d20 plus 3d8 starting value.
All right, so
I don't
I have
think
enough for the
firearm gives you
firearm.
any.
Yeah, so let's see. Firearms is at ranks 5. Otherwise, I don't think I really need any equipment. Coming in with our clothes and the gun. And we're
Yeah, and
back up here to
firearms don't give you any
Boston.
defense. That's another most weapons give you some kind of they give you an amount of hit dice, less so than armor and shields, but firearms don't really give you anything
Yeah.
because it's like you're not gonna I mean, most of the time you're not gonna really be able to block an attack with a weapon, at least not better than you would be able to just get out of the way or block with your arms.
Yep. All right, so now back to Basilisk.
And then your exhaustion threshold is like base number would be 100, but if you have cloth armor, then you write that total instead, and then you modify it if you put skill ranks in it.
Hmm.
But that's something you have to calculate yourself.
All right, so let's fill these skills out then. Ex-
I can describe what those mean too, because some of them are like
yeah, if you want to
esoterically
describe them
named.
while, yeah, if you want to describe them while I try to figure out what I'm going to put in here.
Yes, let
Would you say
me.
the top was 7 or 5 in the skill ranks?
The
The
max is
top level,
five
yeah,
ranks. It's five
5. Okay,
ranks, but it costs 7 points to get there.
yep, yep. Okay, 5.
Is the that's where it would. Yeah. Okay, skills. Awareness, probably one of the more obvious ones. It's your ability to notice details and your senses. If you were a character that has like superhuman senses, you would also put ranks in awareness because you can. This game doesn't have like fantasy races in it, but if you were playing in that kind of setting, then you could use skill ranks to represent natural abilities that are beyond a normal human. Balance is what we use for stealth most of the time. It's if you would roll balance to do sort of acrobatic maneuvers, but also to move around quietly. If you're doing stealth and the main challenge you're overcoming is not stepping on anything that would make noise, then you would roll balance, or you would I would ask you for a focus check, and then you would say that you're adding your balance because it makes sense. Binding is what you use for grappling or pinning somebody, but also for tying things down or climbing or holding on to something bigger, like if you were Shadow of the Colossus style climbing up something or just being shaken around on top of a moving train, then you'd roll binding to hold on. Crafting is a catch-all for tinkering and building and repairing things. Exertion as a skill is used for pushing yourself beyond your limits. So most of the time it ends up being a defensive skill that's referenced by a lot of abilities. So like a strength exertion check would look like physically like holding something up as it's harming your body, like pushing yourself past your physical limits. A spirit exertion would be like overcoming some attack on your willpower. Healing is medicine. It's added if you're trying to cure somebody's injuries or understand something about anatomy and medicine and healing. Influence is what you would use for it's a catch-all for things like lying or persuading someone. Most of the time would be a spirit influence check. Or again, it would be a I would ask for a spirit check, and then if you have ranks in influence, you would volunteer adding that. It's your ability to have sway over other people. Insight is not what it is in D&D. It's using the same word, but it means in this instance it's applying specific knowledge. So if you're in the game and you're like I'm trying to break the door of this jail cell, but I'm setting up leverage and like using things in my environment and my knowledge of physics to like break the door, then you'd be able to add your insight to that because it's like having situational specific education that you're applying to it. Mysticism is knowledge of like supernatural, magical things. If you encounter something otherworldly or related to like religion and spirituality, then you could like mysticism could be applied to navigate the situation or understand it better. Taming is anything relating to animal husbandry, like getting a wild animal to trust you or riding a horse effectively and that kind of thing. Thievery is what we use for picking locks. Sometimes stealth might involve that if it's more technical, like getting a window open quietly or picking somebody's pockets would be a thievery check. And then will is used for like focusing and not being distracted while doing a task. So if you're rolling any of the five stats and the primary consideration for your success is like not being distracted, then you'd be able to add your will to that.
Okay. All right, I think I've got those set. And it's okay to have zeros in some of those,
Yeah.
correct? Like you don't
Yeah.
have to have
Yeah, they start
all
at
of them.
zero, but you don't have to rank them up if you don't want to spend points on it. It just
Okay.
means you have not, like, it also doesn't mean you're bad at it for it to be zero. It means, like, you just haven't spent time practicing that or you're not especially good at it. I
Okay.
have, like, a variant thing for weaknesses if you want to make one of them negative, but,
Okay.
like, to
Cool.
get
Cool.
extra skill points is, like, an extra thing you can do is choose to have one of the 12 skills be especially bad, but
All right.
that's I think presented as a variant rule.
Cool. All right. So I have about 15 skill points left. Um, and those are going to be to buy my moves and perks, correct?
Yep. So
Okay.
that yeah, that would equal three of them. So either two rank tier one and then a rank two in the same fighting style, or three tier one abilities. And the perk and move distinction doesn't matter as far as point spending goes.
Okay.
It's a category for understanding what they do, but they cost the same.
All right. And so tier one is 5 points, right? Tier
Yeah,
ones are
all
five
tiers are the
points.
same points. I should also
Okay.
say the only cost for higher tier abilities is that you need like a training
Prerequisites.
foundation. It's basically like they're not specific prerequisites, but it's like you need a foundation within that sort of school of
Right.
thought fighting style in order to know the more advanced techniques.
Okay.
Yes, we're calling on
So
like martial arts stuff as well.
definitely going to take quick draw.
Yep, that's your character archetype is the one that was in my head when I wrote that, obviously. And you wanted Deadeye. First strike is also there, but quick draw and first strike do similar things, so you don't need both of them.
First strike. So quick draw, definitely first strike will take. Let's look at Hydra a little bit. Uh,
Yeah, there's a couple that could. There's yeah, two-headed strike would be a cool if you want to like shoot through one person and hit someone behind them. Fan the hammer is probably either follow through or flurry, depending on how you want that to be mechanically represented. And then there's also jab if you want to be able to shoot even faster. But
strike. What'd you say was to be like fan the hammer would be like ball of flurry, correct?
follow through or flurry, because yeah, flurry is the one that it has a slower activation but then lets you attack twice at once at reduced accuracy, and
Okay.
follow through lets you like you do any attack and then follow through immediately afterwards, lets you offset the cooldown to the end. So like you could power attack and then instead of starting your 3 point cooldown you follow through immediately and then have a bigger cooldown at the end of it all.
Okay.
but it's like it's more for chaining it with multiple attacks, whereas flurry is like a self-contained multi-attack.
Right, those are added in there. I can add them to like the left or the right side of the sheet later. I just want to get my points to 0. They are.
Yeah, you got your points in there, and then
Then activation. I guess I do have to type
yes,
those in.
it'll
Quick draw. Help me out. What's the quick draw? Quick draw's activation?
quick draw. Wait, is it a perk or is it
I
a
quick draw is a perk, possibly. I'm not looking at the book.
see it again? I'm pretty sure it's a yeah, it's a perk.
Okay.
It's for when you roll reaction time. So that's the like at the start of a fight, you roll a random number minus it's a if you're unprepared to fight, then it's a D12 minus your speed to see like how quickly you can start on the timeline so that not everybody is starting all on top of each other at zero, unless it's like a if you were doing like a draw, then everyone would start at zero and you would
Okay.
choose your action without knowing what the other person is doing. But most of the time, a fight has you reacting for some amount of time, and quick draw lets you negate that. Oh yeah, that's why it has the if you start combat without rolling reaction time. So like if you are dueling somebody at a signal, you can still act faster.
No cooldown on first strike.
Yeah, no additional cooldown anyway, because your pepper box I think has a cooldown of one on all its attacks anyways. I should say also cooldown. It might sound like it's a like the weapon is on cooldown. It's more like your character is on cooldown because it's you resolve the action and then you move on the timeline by the cooldown value. So
Okay.
it just pushes back your next turn when it happens.
Okay. Then flurry. I'm just gonna put flurry stuff in real quick here. Find it. Flurry activation. So activation says it's times 1.5. So I guess like that'd be
Yeah.
the
Yeah, you use the like take the base number of your pepper box and do that because that's like if you're filling out the details for the
yeah.
moves and perks, you can like calculate the totals. It might be helpful then to like fill out the pepper box stats first.
It'd be like 7.5, right? Or I guess
We
maybe
round up in this, so
1.5.
it's the 0.5 rounds up to the nearest.
Okay. So it'd be
Because yeah,
6 then.
decimals would make this even it would make the math even worse. And also
Yeah, so
I'm an
it'd be
optimist,
6.
so we round up.
Yeah, it would end up being 6 for the activation.
Right. Well, and then you're also adding like there's your speed is involved in that too. So you might have to like what value did you put your speed at?
Speed is 1.
Okay, so that's a it's minus half, but rounding up. So then all of your the base activation time is one less, and then you would do multiplication after that.
So it would end up at 6, right? I'm not wrong there.
If
Yeah, I'm trying
you're
to do the math in my head. So
we're
it's
looking at what first
so
strike?
the pepper box, so it'd be flurry.
Okay,
Flurry.
flurry
So the
is
pepper box's activation time is 5,
okay, minus
and
one from your
-1 from the
so
speed would
it's
be 4.
4, and then half again as much is yeah, it's 6.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, it's two attacks for the price of 1.5.
All right. So I have those filled out. Ba, ba, ba.
And then yeah, the reduced accuracy and everything, but that's your accuracy is going to be pretty good. So you can most of the time you're still gonna, if you think about how the numbers add up, you're rolling a d12, and that's sort of the scale that someone's evasion can be on. So if you're adding like +9 or whatever to the attacks, then you're going to critically hit more often than not.
Right. All right. Well, I think I have my character sheet filled out here. I'm gonna go ahead and save a copy of this.
Okay. Then we can set it in the Discord, and I guess
Right, with
have that available as a reference. Did you pick out your NPC relationships?
yeah. So Ginny Redwood, friendly rivalry.
Yes. And then you still had a debt you owe, right?
Oh yes, I do. I did not pick that out, but we can
Yes.
come back
So
to
we
that
can
after
maybe
we
we
go
can
through.
quickly like look back at the list and just pick someone that you.
Yeah, I'm not sure it'll matter for what we're about to do, though, right?
Yeah, well, it might come up because all of these are characters that like could become important. So if you owe
But I'm
somebody a
saying
debt,
for the it's like the quick run through of combat that we're
oh
about to
well,
do.
yeah, sure. If we're doing that, then yes, it's not going to. Yeah, it would only come up if it was like a grudge was involved, but I wouldn't make you like fight your arch enemy for an example thing anyway.
Sweet. Others. We'll drop this in the Discord.
Okay, cool. Well, copy of split set character with
Yeah,
yeah.
I just didn't name it very
Yeah.
well.
That's fine. That's how it goes.
All right. I need to take a quick like 5 minute break before we get started,
Yes,
and then we can
we'll take
try
the
to.
quick break and then we'll come back and we'll do a quick like combat example overview. I'm gonna put you up against a couple of goons and it'll take like not that long.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yep. Okay.
All right,
Quick
we'll be
break.
right back.
We'll be back. Okay, so we've got a character built out here. It's gonna be an example, but also the first character built out of the what will be a party of three for our short little mini campaign thing. We're going to just do a quick example combat because we have time since it's just one player, and that's going to sort of show how this kind of comes in, like how this actually manifests and what the system looks like in practice now that we have a character that we can use that for. So we're going to start, I think we're going to jump into like the immediate before the actual campaign happens so that like we can sort of get into it, have a little bit of a precursor prologue. It's going to be, we're going to start with your character arriving on the island. Perhaps you've been away for some time, or like you're just coming back, you're seeing how the town is. You are at the docks, the town famously called Glass Dock because of the weirdly high amount of ocean glass that washes up on the beaches. But then after it was named that, people sort of decorate the docks and the boardwalk type area with pieces of beach glass and colored ornaments and stuff just hanging from ropes. So there's a somewhat, maybe a little bit junky looking, but a nice, colorful, sparkly, welcome area for you to be introduced back. You've, I'm sure, been here before since you know the main saloon owner, but you're coming back, you're arriving on a ship, and you're getting off. Your reasons are your own. You are a stranger in town to some, but that's okay. As you are getting off of the boat, you notice a couple people eyeing you suspiciously. You're still on the dock, you're getting off the boat, but you notice that there is someone who has a brace of pistols on their person, just single shot flintlock, but they've got three of them. They are trying to look like they're not paying attention to you, but you know the look of somebody who's waiting for you to turn a corner so they can
They clearly
try to,
are.
yeah. They're like you know the vibe.
Yeah,
You know someone who's waiting for you to stop looking at them. So yeah,
very
from
good.
that we can like I'll leave it to you, I guess, how we start combat from there because there's a couple different ways that can go that determines how initiative starts.
Yeah, so I think, sorry, I was just looking for a D12 here. So I think probably the way that I would see this going is he gets off the boat, he notices these goons kind of looking at him. He's gonna give them kind of a sharp eye and walk toward them and shoulder check the first guy that he like comes in contact with. And like he's going to intentionally start this fight
Right.
knowing that they were looking at him. So he's gonna shoulder check the first guy, and I think that's how combat should start.
Okay. Do you want to treat that as an actual attack or it's just a we're fighting now gesture?
Um I'll treat it as just a we're fighting now
Okay.
gesture. Like he's gonna shoulder check him and get, 3 or 4 paces ahead and spin
Yep.
around.
Yeah, you shoulder check him. He was probably going to wait longer, but it's an affront to his ego, so he takes that as the excuse. You push past him and immediately like hear and feel him drawing on you, so that's where we will start. Since you knew combat was happening, let me pull up starting combat. You're not starting it with an attack, so that's not how that works. But yeah, perfect. Yep, everyone involved. Since you planned this, you were trying to start a fight. You're going to roll a d6 minus your speed as your reaction time. He's going to roll a d12.
Right. 2 minus speed, 1 is my total.
Okay, he got a 2 minus 1, which is a 1. Let me just pull up the. I think there's only two of us, but for my own benefit, I'm going to use my bot in my Discord. No, actually, I don't need to do that. Okay. So he's starting at one on the timeline. You're starting at
One.
okay. So that means because you're at the same point and the system allows that to happen, you choose your first action without knowing what his first action is going to be, because they will activate simultaneously, and then whichever one is faster will resolve faster. But
Yeah. We're going to use first strike, I believe.
yep, first strike, it's in the name. That's what it's. Let me figure out what he's doing. He's going to open up with, yeah, he also wants to be fast. Okay, I have what he's doing. You are how, what's your total activation for first strike?
Activation is -2 for first strike. How do I calculate the rest of it?
It is, well, you're still using the stats of your gun as the base, so
Okay.
it's the pepper box minus the one from your speed, and then minus the two from.
Okay, so I guess that would be 2 then, since the pepper box activation is 5.
Yep. Okay, so that moves you from one to three on the timeline. And that, so as you turn around to quick draw, shoot him, he is drawing his weapon. That has an activation time equal to half the normal attack. So it's, he is at four. No, he's at, yeah, he's also at three on the timeline. So you're still at the same point. You turn around, and as you're resolving the shot, he is pulling out the first of his pistols after reacting fairly quickly. He was rolling a d12 and rolled low, so he was more ready for a fight than maybe you were expecting, but still you're able to fire off your first shot as he's just readying one of his pistols.
Okay.
So that means we can resolve that. Yeah, he doesn't have a cooldown for drawing it, but we're going to do your attack. So you roll a d12 and you add your total accuracy, which would be your focus plus the number of accuracy skill ranks you've put into firearms.
9. I rolled pretty low, so
Okay, well,
2
nine is
plus
still pretty good.
7. Wait, so what did you say? You said it was what? The D12 plus ranks and firearms and
Yeah,
focus.
and your focus.
So 4, 9, oh, excuse me, 11.
Yeah. So not that's I mean, like we were saying earlier, your character is a pretty good shot. Even on a bad day, you're shooting better than most people.
Hmm.
His evasion is only seven, which means that wait, you said 11 total? Okay, so that actually qualifies as a critical hit then because you went four over his evasion. So
Very
it
good.
doesn't do anything to your damage, but it staggers him by two. So it pushes him back to five on the timeline before he's able to do anything else. And then, yeah, so your damage for that is what? It's, yeah, you
You
don't
said it
have
would be
anything.
+1 because it was 5 barrels, so 10.
Yeah, your
Did we say
base
that?
damage is 10, and then it doesn't add your strength because it's a gun, but it does, I think first strike adds
Add.
something to the damage.
Let's see. This weapon is powered by technology. Strength is not added. Instead, add half of my
Oh,
focus.
right,
So
yes. So,
another, that'd be 10 plus 2, so 12.
yeah, 12, and then does first strike plus damage, or it's just accuracy and speed?
I think it's just accuracy. Let me double check.
Okay, yeah, so 12 damage. Okay, then before anything else happens, I'll start rolling his hit dice. He's got a few of
Nope,
them
another
from,
+2 damage, so 14.
okay, 14 damage total. His damage resistance is four because he's got, like, you're noticing as you turn to face him, he's wearing like a thick layered overcoat, so he is protected and practiced in wearing this as defensive armor. But he still doesn't have that many hit dice, and 10 damage is still a lot. So I'm going to roll first a Yeah, he's got some D8s and D6s, so gonna try to get rid of this quickly. He rolls a D8, gets a total of 8, and he's trying to get to 10, so then he's gonna roll one of the D6s next, and got a 5 for a total of 13, so he spent that D8 and that D6 in order to very quickly twist out of the way and turn what would have been a death blow into a glancing shot. It's not actually that he was hit and absorbed it, it's that
Right.
he still has some fight in him. You're not able to kill him immediately, but
Cool.
he has lost some of his nerve. And then you have a cooldown of just one for that.
Whatever the pepper box is cool.
Yeah, it's just one. So that puts you to 4. And because you got a critical hit and staggered him, you're now at 4 and 5 on the timeline, which means it's your turn to act still. So you can,
Said two staggers on him, right?
yeah, 2 points
Say two.
staggered.
Okay.
So he went from, yeah, 3 to 5.
3 to 5. Okay.
Yeah, and then yeah, because he went from 3 to 5, then even after your cooldown, you're still lower than him on the timeline, which means it is still your turn.
It would be cool to have a visual representation of the timeline at some
Yes,
point.
well, yeah,
We'll work
that's
on it.
what we're going to do. It's yeah,
Yeah. No,
I'm
you're good.
gonna I have a few things. I have a Discord bot that I normally use that
I got you.
presents it as a list, and then I'm trying to make like a browser version of that for streaming purposes. But
Hell yeah, that'll be
yeah,
cool.
for this, there's only two of you. You're at 4 and 5.
Yeah, that's fine. So then I guess we're gonna fan the hammer on him. So flurry.
Okay.
Um that's an
So total.
activation of 6
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, first
plus
shot
my
didn't do
pepper
it.
box.
So throwing in a couple more, that brings you up from 4 to 10 on the timeline.
Okay.
Okay, then it's his turn. He has drawn a pistol. Given that that was yeah, he sees that there's an attack coming. His power attack would go off before your, like he's using guns too, so pretty fast. If he power attacked, he would resolve it before your attack hits him, but then he'd be on cooldown for too long and wouldn't be able to do anything. So instead, I'm going to try and demonstrate reactions by having him start a reckless attack. So he pulls out or he has his first pistol. He just tries to wildly and quickly aim it at you and fire off a shot. So it has an activation of only one because he's doing a full -3 reckless, which is one of the basic moves you have,
Mhm.
which brings him up to 6. Then it is still his turn, and he gets to roll the attack. He has a total accuracy of -1 to this because reckless also subtracts from accuracy. So rolling a d12 -1, that's an 8 total.
Okay.
And what's your evasion?
Evasion is 7.
Okay, so it was enough to get a normal hit on you. So no additional effects, but it does do. No, he's not adding because he doesn't have. It's 12 damage total
Okay.
from him. So then that's where you can bring out your hit dice. So he draws one, he quickly and wildly fires, but is still able to shoot hot lead and smoke and fire in your direction. You have just your base hit dice, I believe, unless you got the cloth armor as well.
No, just base hit
Okay.
dice.
So
So
just the
one.
3d8s, and then
Mhm.
the d20 is a special one, but that's you can only roll the d20 after you've spent the rest of them, and you can't use the d20 for, like, there's other abilities that allow you to
I can
expend hit dice,
roll.
but the d20 is special.
So I can roll any number of d8 to try to essentially negate
Yes,
some damage.
you don't have to commit to the number first either. You can roll, like, first reduce your damage resistance if you have any, but
I do not because I don't
okay,
have any
so then
armor.
yeah, it's just
So
the 12 damage. You just like roll one
I'm gonna
d8 and
roll. Yeah, I'm
then
gonna roll
roll
one
another,
d8.
and then yeah, every one that
So
you roll is spent.
yep. So I'm gonna spend one d8 to reduce that by 2.
Okay. And
So it'll be
then
10 damage total, right?
yeah. Well, yeah, you keep rolling until it's either gone or you take an injury because it's like taking an
Okay.
actual injury is a big deal. It's the hit dice are the barrier between you and harm, so you keep rolling them until it's until one of them runs out.
Okay, so until it runs out. So I rolled it once, right?
Yeah,
And I rolled a two on
you
it.
rolled a d8, so it's spent, and then you roll another one and add it to the running total.
I got you. What if I just wanted to stop at two? Would I still take an injury at this point?
It's you could choose to take an injury, but like it's something that you don't want to do normally because it's like taking an injury, especially if you're taking like 10 damage, that could kill you immediately if you're unlucky and it hits your head.
Yeah, so okay, so I rolled another D8 for a five, so that's seven running total, and I'm trying to get to 10.
You're trying to get to 12, it was,
12.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, because you had two and then five. So yeah, roll that one. You've got five more to go.
So seven plus eight is over the 12. Um, so that's 15 I rolled total.
Okay.
And I've
But you've
spent
spent all
all of them.
three.
I've
Yep.
spent
You
all
still
three.
have the D20, which is your last chance die. It's your like luck and fate and Hail Mary to get out of damage.
Okay.
Last chance. It's special because it doesn't you can't spend it for other things that hit dice are spent on. And if it
Okay.
rolls a natural 20, then you get to keep it. So if you're really lucky, then you can just survive indefinitely, but
Right, right, right.
you're
Okay.
getting close to the danger zone.
Okay.
Okay, that fires cooldown of two. He moves from six to eight. You're still at 10 with your flurry in progress. And then since you have that, he's going to attempt to evade. So the way reactions work in this is they don't have an activation time, but you move up to the thing that you're reacting to. So
Mhm.
evade and block are both basic moves. The way it works is like if there's an attack targeting you, then you can evade or block it, moving yourself up to the point on the timeline that that attack is coming, and then it
Uh-huh.
gives you a benefit. In the case of
Okay.
evade, it increases his evasion against that attack.
Okay.
Yeah, let me pull it up to make sure that I'm. Yeah, evade cooldown to reaction, trigger evasion is 4 points higher. So he's doing that. So he moves up to 10 on the timeline next to you, and then you get to resolve your flurry.
Okay.
So I believe it's two attacks at, I think, minus
Minus
three
three.
accuracy,
That's
but
correct.
you're like that's subtracted from your normal accuracy total. So,
All right, so we'll roll two D12s, one for each attack.
yep.
What is that? This was not a D12. That's not my D12. Sorry. There's the D12. So six plus, I guess that'd be five. I think that's 11, 15 with the focus, minus three. That's 11 for the first
Yep.
one.
So another critical hit.
And
Wait, no, because he's evading. So that makes it a 11 is a normal hit right now.
okay. And then three, eight, 12, 9. So 11 and a 9 for hits.
Okay, so that's one normal hit and then one miss. Miss doing half damage because it's if you get less than evasion minus four, then it's a fumble and it does nothing, but a
Okay.
miss still does half damage. So
Okay.
yeah, you got one normal hit full damage and then one half damage on him. So your damage total was what, 12? Or was it?
The
No,
pepper
it was
box is what, 9?
well, it was nine, but then it was plus one because you have the five barrel.
Oh, that's right.
And
So
then
10,
plus half your focus, which is another two, I believe.
2. Yep.
Yeah,
So
so
12.
yeah, 12 total. So that's
So
12
12 and
damage and then
6.
six
So
damage.
18.
Also, a note here, strategy rules wise, multiple sources of damage have to be rolled against separately with hit dice. So since it's broken up, you're forcing him to waste dice potentially.
Okay.
Like if you have 1 point left and you decide to roll a d8, then it's spent no matter what you roll, even if there's more
Mhm.
damage coming.
Cool.
All right, I'll roll against the six damage first. He has 2d8 and a d6 left, so I'll roll a d8. He's hoping to get lucky. He rolled a natural one on the d8. Rolling the second is an 8 for a total of 9. So he was able to negate the 6 damage with both of his d8s, leaving him with 1d6 left from his armor. So I'm still going to roll it, even though it doesn't have a chance of doing anything, just to see. He rolled a 5. So that means he took a total of 7 actual real damage from that attack. Let me find the injuries thing, because now is when it makes a big difference. Okay, 7 damage. It's enough. It's in brackets. Minor injuries are 1 to 5 damage, concerning 6 to 10. Serious is 11 to 19, and then deadly is 20 plus damage from a single
Okay.
source. These cause injuries. He's at the concerning tape scale, which means he takes 1 injury and is staggered by 2 points. I would like you to roll a d12 to determine what part of his body you hit.
Yeah, no problem. A 2.
That's the torso. So
Bleed out.
he's pushed to 12 and then cooldown of that, so 14, and you're at 11 because of the cooldown of your attack. But torso injury, any injury triggers an incapacitation save. So he has to roll a d12 and add his strength. It's 4 plus 2 for each injury, so he has to roll a d12 and try and get over a 6 to remain in the fight. And he has a strength of 3, so he's trying to roll 3 or higher. Roll a 4. Okay, so he still has an injury in his torso. He's bleeding. It's going to be a big deal later, but he is able to keep fighting for now.
Okay.
Just note that. And yes, because he was staggered and he was on cooldown because he tried to evade, so he's pushed all the way to 14. You're brought to 11 from the cooldown of your attack, so it is your turn.
Um, just a regular attack.
Yep. Finish him. Yeah, knowing that the damage scaling of a single shot is still enough to like kill somebody. I'll also let you know you can attempt to target specific body parts for a -2 accuracy.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna go for a headshot then.
Yep.
Okay. So just roll a
That's
d12 then.
a wait, so it's activation 4 for your basic attack, right?
Oh, basic attack. It doesn't stay in the moves like on the power sheet, like on the sheet. Character sheet doesn't have just attack.
Because it's just I think it's 5 base activation and then
For the pepper box, it is 5. Yes.
yeah, so just the -1 from your speed. So
Yep.
yeah, brings you up to 15. He's at 14, is able to get his bearings. He's going to try to evade again. So yeah, just to make it simple, he goes up to 15 to match you. His effective evasion is 11 right now, and you can roll your attack.
Okay. Roll the d12 here. 5, 10, 14. And -2 for the headshot, so 12.
Yep. So 1 point higher than his effective evasion right now. So even though he's very much trying to get out of this situation and dodge, you're still able to get that headshot off.
Okay.
So yeah, the 12 damage, he's out of hit dice, so he can't do anything about it. He taking 12 damage is a serious injury, which causes 2 injuries at once in the location and staggers by 3 points. And we're not going to bother moving him on the timeline because 2 injuries at once disables or removes the limb, and doing so to the head is instant death. So
Very good.
you fire your 4th shot and he's dead.
Neat. Very
I think
good.
he only got off. Did he shoot you once or
He
twice?
shot me once.
Okay, so yeah, 5 shots ringing out in the span of about 10 seconds
A shootout right there. That's
on
cool.
the dock.
Yeah, that's neat.
at a distance of a few feet from each other, and he lies dead on the dock.
Well, I like that. No, I think I see how combat works. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and then obviously it gets more like if you have more players involved in the timeline in front of you, there's strategy about like do I want to get off another attack right now or do I want to
Right.
try avoiding incoming damage? And
Hmm.
knowing that once you're out of hit dice, that's the danger
Yeah.
zone. It also
Things
lets
would
you
have got
do
weird because I
yeah,
was out of hit dice, so that would have got a little
yes.
sketchy.
Yeah, you were almost in danger there for a second, but you were a better shot than him.
Yep. Okay, cool. Yeah, that was fun. I think that's going to be really enjoyable for sure.
Yeah, thought it was fun. Yeah, that's a I think a good example, quick thing. We can see yeah, you got to see a couple. That's one of my like pre-made NPCs just swapped to have a brace of pistols instead of a like club or whatever he had before.
Yeah.
But
All
yeah,
right, cool. Well, I'm excited for it to start, like after everybody else's character gets made and so
yeah,
I can
I'm
play it.
excited. We'll see what other characters people are making. We have one person who's gonna make either yeah, we're gonna have either yeah, we're gonna have either like another druid, like he was talking about a druid or a ranger type archetype. So he's gonna be probably a forest man, maybe magic user to sort of show how magic works in the system, and then the other character is gonna be whatever that player wants it to be. So we'll have a nice little trio. Yeah, before we go, I guess like again, I'm Gora. I'm the designer of the system, and I'm the going to be the GM for our upcoming mini campaign, Last Dock. Uh, yeah, I hope it's going to be fun. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Thanks
And
everyone for watching.
yeah, Micro Trip and stoked to get this game on the road for sure. Bye
Yeah.
guys.
Thanks everyone who came and watched, whether you were here for the whole thing or not. I appreciate it and hope to see you next time.